Our guest today is not only a powerful holistic practitioner and the founder of The Way of the Warrior Woman, she also happens to be one of Tracey's best friends.
If you break down the word Ayurveda, Aya means science or knowledge and Veda means life. So it's the knowledge of life, the science of life. We're all made up of the same elements that make up every living thing. In Ayurveda, we break these down into doshas. So Vata is ether and air, Pitta is fire and water, and Kapha is water and earth. Western medicine has taught us that you get this diagnosis, you take this pill. Ayurveda is unique to the person. It covers the Trinity, so it's mind, body and spirit. Most people will tell you that Ayurveda finds them, and that was no different for my journey. I was at an extremely low point in my life, and then when I turned 40, I broke up from my partner who was suffering with severe mental illness, and the 2 years prior to that had been very intense. He was in and out of hospital. I was on suicide watch. All of his relationships started dissolving and ours was one of them. When that happened, I had to stop and just realise I hadn't checked in with myself, for years. I didn't recognise my own reflection. I was just health-wise very low. My body was in pain. I was so depleted. The first time in 2 decades, it was just me.
Welcome everybody to the Reconnect to Self podcast, the podcast that helps you rediscover what ultimately brings you joy. My name is Scott. I am a filmmaker and I'm here with my wife Tracey, who is a counsellor of some 15 to 20 years. We still never actually nailed down that amount of time, but how are you, babe?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am well. We have a very good episode today, a very special guest. But before we jump into that, I am going to do our little ad for our retreats because we still don't have an official sponsor. So we are your sponsor. So today's episode is brought to you by the Reconnect to Self retreat, which we are running in May, and the Reconnect Relationships retreat, which we are running in June. Tracey, would you like to give us a little 30-second spiel about what to expect on the individual retreat?
We are going to be showing people ways to regulate their nervous system, to come back to themselves, to love on themselves, take care of themselves, and just have a bit of time out where they can just really focus on themselves in a beautiful setting, eating beautiful, nutritious meals, and connecting with other people as well.
And there's going to be a bit more of a focus on breathwork.
Yes, I'll be able to take people
because you're certified, nearly,
but I'll be taking people on a journey that will hopefully get them into an altered state of consciousness and tapping into things that are kind of stuck in their bodies and releasing things that have been there for years.
Beautiful. Good job. And the relationship retreat?
This is where we are looking at all the skills that are required to have a healthy relationship. So things like communication skills, conflict resolution skills, ways to put intimacy and connection back in the relationship. So pretty much all the things that you would need to know in order to have a good, strong, healthy relationship.
Well done. You're a pro. All right. Shall we get into the episode?
Let's get into it.
Okay. Let me just get my little intro out here. Our guest today is not only a powerful holistic practitioner and the founder of The Way of the Warrior Woman, she also happens to be one of Tracey's best friends. And if you've been listening since episode 1, you've probably heard us mention this person's name at least a dozen times, and we have finally got her into the studio. And by studio, I mean our house. Nikki's work blends Ayurveda, energy healing, and deep feminine embodiment in a way that's incredibly accessible and empowering, especially for women who are feeling unwell, disconnected, or burnt out and ready to come back into their bodies. If you're new to Ayurveda, have never heard of it before, this episode is the perfect beginner's guide. Without further ado, and I hope I did you justice there, Nikki. Welcome to the show.
Very, very lovely. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. We've been wanting to get you in here, and as I said, we've mentioned you so many times on this show, so it's good to...
All good things.
Yes.
Yes, all good things.
Now they can see the face and hear the voice behind
Absolutely.
the name.
So there will be a video on Spotify. So if you're on Spotify, check out the video bit. Obviously, YouTube as well, if you want to listen there.
She's very beautiful. It's worth checking out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So where do you want to start? Do you want to start with like what Ayurveda is just in general, and then we can maybe go a little bit into your backstory? Or
yeah.
Tracey has something. Go. All right, we're going off script already. Go on then.
I just wanted to know how you got into it.
So most people will tell you that Ayurveda finds them, and that was no different for my journey. I was at an extremely low point in my life. I had years before gone through a journey with my mum. She had melanoma and passed away, and she wanted to do it holistically. So there was a lot of research helping her find the right diet. We found her a practitioner that was able to help her with detox processes. And, you know, so I was doing a lot of research, found out a lot of stuff about Western medicine and how that's not really serving you. And then she passed away and, you know, life sort of continues on. And then when I turned 40, I broke up from my partner who was suffering with severe mental illness. And the 2 years prior to that had been very intense. And I'm talking high care.
That's all you did around that time. You just
I never had an opportunity to check in with myself for a good couple of years. It was, you know, it was managing his mental state.
Working a lot. You were still working around that time.
Yeah, I was working, not full time, but pretty much full time. And, you know, my daughter was in her last few years of high school, so that was very intense as well, trying to, you know, juggle all that kind of stuff. He was in and out of hospital. I was on suicide watch, you know, for probably the last 6 months.
Your nervous system just would have been shot. With all of that.
it was pretty full on, and all of his relationships started dissolving, and ours was one of them. And when that happened, I had to stop and just realise I hadn't checked in with myself, you know, for years. I didn't recognise my own reflection, you know, I was just health-wise very low. My body was in pain. My health wasn't great. I hadn't loved myself. Yeah. I was giving so depleted. And that's, you know, by this stage, my daughter had just turned 18. She kind of didn't need me as much. She was working, she'd left school, she had a license, she was living her own life. I was separated from my partner, and for the first time in 2 decades, it was just me. So it all, I guess, kind of divinely happened like that, and I massively turned inward and had to get to know myself again. And so then I started unraveling a lot of things, starting introducing, you know, different processes into my life, different modalities, food. I was already, you know, because of mum, very careful with my diet. I ate organic foods and was really careful about what I put on my skin. And,
yeah,
you
you've
know,
always been good with that stuff.
Yeah, so I kind of had a really good base, but really had to strip everything back and start from scratch.
So something you said there was getting to know yourself again. What was that like? Like, is it scary? Is it confronting? Is it?
It's very confronting. I think the first thing that I really noticed about myself was judgment. You know, I was 40 years old. My whole life had fallen apart pretty much overnight. I could kind of sense where things were going, but I didn't realise exactly how it was going to go, if that makes sense. So when the rug just got swept out from under me and I was, you know, single, I was, I guess at work, I was a corporate accountant, and I got the promotion that I actually studied at uni for in my 30s, only 3 weeks before this all happened. So, you know, we had to sell our home. Money was tight. It was everything that we had worked for. You know, we had a beautiful home. We had savings so that we could take a year off, which we had, been planning for a long time to do. And, then we had to sell our home. So all that money went into renovating so that we could sell the home. It was just...
I didn't know that.
Everything
I didn't know that you'd saved to have a year off and then it went into that.
Yeah, so that was where we were heading, and everything got sucked up. By the time we settled on the house, I think we got about $17 each out of it.
Oh, God.
And, I had my job, I had, the promotion. My daughter was off living her own life. So it was really coming back and going, wow, how did I get here? I'm 40. Why am I restarting now?
So was the promotion not a good thing or?
I guess at the time it was a bit of a saviour, because even though by that stage I didn't necessarily want it, it was something that I had wanted 10 years earlier. By the time I got it, I kind of just took it as everything happens for a reason. This is happening now because everything else has been stripped away. So let this be a part of your foundation.
So it wasn't that you got it and then realised it wasn't actually what you wanted anymore? Or was that a little bit the case?
A little bit the case, It was. But I embraced it.
Yeah.
Because at the time there was a lot less to embrace.
So
that was just kind of one thing that was like, I have a tick over here. Yeah. I'm really gonna make the most of that.
Can we go back to the judgment thing? Because that's something, Tracey, you
just recently.
And we talked about in the last episode.
I've overcome a little bit of my own judgment. I was realising that the judgment was coming from within me, not coming from 100%. Outside. Yeah.
So I spent good couple of months just thinking, what are other people thinking about where I'm at? Are they, oh, poor Nikki, or, she should have been more careful with her, whatever it was, it was just everything just came flooding in. And it took quite a few months of me working through that and realising that the only way past it is through it.
Yeah.
And the only way through it is I have to be okay with nothing. I have to be okay with starting from nothing again.
Wow.
And so then I just went to work on myself, and that's where my whole journey started, I guess, because I guess if you're building a foundation that's, however many layers, that was layer one. Yeah. The judgment was the first thing that flowed into my life. And, we've all got judgment. But we judge ourselves so much more harshly than we judge anyone else.
And even without realising, I think only my recent stuff that came up made me realise, oh my gosh, I didn't even know that was coming from me. I thought that I'm pretty loving, I'm pretty self-accepting, especially nowadays. But even there, I had lots of growth to sort of do around that.
Absolutely. Just wake up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror and tell me you don't have any judgment. Like, oh, who is this sea witch?
I can resonate from a number of years ago when I started my own business. The fear I had around, if this doesn't work, what are people going to say? And it took me years and years to get past that. But I think, and the reason I wanted to talk about it with you is because I think so many people face it. And I feel like it's one of the number one things that holds you back. Because I found once I sort of let go of, or once I kind of realised anyone who cares about me, if I fail, they're not really judging me. They're going to try and help me.
They're there to support you.
Yeah, lift you up and get you back. And
if they're not your people.
Exactly,
That's right.
exactly. Yeah. And then the other thing is most people are so consumed by themselves and everything that's going on in their life that they're not really thinking about you anyway. You just think they are, but they're not. They're busy worrying about themselves and probably
they're doing exactly the same thing
exactly.
that you're doing.
Yeah. So I found that to be like that letting go of the fear is like the huge thing that can allow you to go on and do whatever you want and have that ability to succeed because you're not limiting yourself.
Yeah, it's a very liberating experience to go through,
So how did you get into Ayurveda from this point?
So from this point, I mean, that was just the first thing that came in. I was experiencing pain, severe chronic pain in all my joints. So for most of my 30s, I had carpal tunnel. So even driving for more than 20 minutes, my wrists would ache, couldn't open jars, ankles and knees, which I always was like, I played netball for 15 years. That's the reason for that. In winters, my hips could feel the rain before the weather forecast would tell you it's coming.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
That's a real old
I
lady.
think that's an old lady sign right there.
Yeah. And then when all of this happened in my 40s, I developed frozen shoulder. And as far as healing my body from pain, that's the one. Even though I'd had that slow creep, I just ignored it because, I was having my smoothies every day. I was eating organic. I was at the gym. I was strong. I was fit.
And you were rationalising away the things you were feeling. That's from netball. That's from this. I'm getting older, probably.
Exactly. But when I could not, that would have me in tears, just the slightest movement of my arm.
Wow.
And I just got to thinking I'll never be able to pick up my grandkids. And that was huge for me. So that was the catalyst for me sitting down and going, this ain't right, love. We've really got to start from the beginning and work through this and understand that I got that it was an emotional thing. It happened right at that time when everything fell apart. And I guess that was the thing that made me really start looking about how you heal your body holistically. And it took me back to Mum and that journey, and we had the detox processes sorted out, we had the diet sorted out, but Mum was holding on to a lot emotionally.
Yeah.
And, in the last few months, I was spending almost every day with her, and I'd quit my job at that stage and was helping Dad care for her. And I was begging her to talk about what she was holding on to. Not even to me, but, just to bring in whatever. And she was very adamant that was not how they handled those things. And yes, it was really painful knowing that something was eating away at her on the inside, and she didn't have the strength or
courage. Because it takes a lot of courage. It takes
really
both of
does.
those things. People think that they think stoic and stiff upper lip and all the rest of it is the way to go. And it's not. That's not brave. That's not strong.
No.
That's not courageous. That's just you shoving everything down. And that's when it goes into your cells. That's when it goes into other areas of your body where it shouldn't be
we
sitting.
hold that in our connective tissue, and it just starts affecting our movement. It starts affecting everything. So, I realised that there was a huge emotional component in Mum's journey that never got addressed. And I didn't want that for myself.
Well, that's what we've talked about in other episodes about how we actually think the reason why cancer's not been cured is because it's so many things within your own individual system that need to be addressed. It's not going to be a blanket, formula for everybody. It's going to be doing your own work and uncovering your own layers and releasing your own energies in certain things, because like I've had so many people I know that they've gone through a stressful time and that's when they get an autoimmune disorder, or Scott had a really stressful time when he was doing his film and that's when he gets his Meniere's diagnosis. So all of these things seem to be triggered and happening around a really emotional and stressful time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Shows up in the body.
So that's why I love Ayurveda, because it covers the Trinity. So it's mind, body and spirit. And so to get to the point, I had been asking Spirit for, where this was taking me. And I was becoming unfulfilled. I love accounting, absolutely love it. You all know that I'm a spreadsheet nerd.
She's saying this to her best friend that does her accounts using a tally system.
Yep, she does. No judgment.
Don't publicly put that out there.
Mr. Taxman. So I had been, I was meditating every day by this stage. I had developed a practice where 2 hours every morning I was just solely working on myself. So I was starting to heal, a lot of, uncover a lot of things in my body. And each layer that you uncover, you notice an ease somewhere else in your body. And it was just a really interesting journey. But the whole time I'm asking, where is this journey taking? Why did I go through this? And I was down in Margaret River with my partner, and I dropped him off. He was mountain biking, and I just walked up the high street. And my intention was to walk into the bookstore, buy a book, go to the coffee shop, sit down and read, and give him a few hours. And as I was walking up the street and into the bookstore, I said, right, I'm done guessing. If you're telling me I'm not hearing it, so I'm going to walk into this bookstore and you're actually just going to show me. And a purple book caught my eye, so I walked straight over to grab it, and it was an introduction to Ayurveda.
Oh,
my God.
wow.
So that was my aha. And once I picked up that book, I actually could see all the ways that Spirit had showed me. It had pushed Ayurveda at me in podcasts, in things that I was seeing online. Just, I think a good 5 immediately stood out to me, and I was like, okay, I didn't listen.
I needed it in book
That
form.
was my bad.
Yeah.
I'm asking and asking, but I'm actually not receiving. And I guess that's, it's a good lesson to learn for people that are constantly giving and feel, get that depleted. You have to start asking to receive and to bring things into your life. You need that energetic flow to move into these things. And, everything in life is about realizing our dharma, which is our purpose. So here I am going, tell me what my purpose is. And I wasn't actually allowing it in.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, so you were talking to Spirit before, so you were kind of going down a path where you were open to those things, because I think some of our audience would be talking to Spirit. What is that? But essentially, well, why don't you describe at that point, what was that like for you? What does that mean?
Okay, so I do have a history. So my family is very spiritual, as Tracey knows and you know. We have, medicine men and women. We have healers. My granddad was a farmer, and he was also the local vet, although he was never qualified to do that. He just knew what to do with animals. So we have this healing and this spiritual connection in our family. And when I started meditating, I was reading everything I could because I had been avoiding this connection my whole life. And me and Tracey spent years going to clairvoyance, and every time I would sit down with them, they're like, you have this gift, you have to bring it in. I'm not ready. Not interested. And, when I sat down now, I was like, well, I've kind of stripped everything away. What have I got to lose? If I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. And it's in my blood. So I really sat down and just started communicating. And I had no idea what that looked like then. And I was talking to my aunt, and she's a spiritual healer and, energy worker. And so we did a lot of work together, and she was helping me shift a lot of, blocks so that I could get myself to a point where I could open up a connection. Because when our systems are toxic and our body is taxed just trying to deal with what it deals with every day, it's hard to make that connection to Spirit.
Yeah.
You really need a clear channel.
A lighter system kind of
A
thing.
much lighter system. You need to elevate your vibration, because all of our lower vibrations keep us trapped in more of a physical form, which is our lower 3 chakras. We also need to learn how to raise our vibration, because when we're stuck in the lower vibrations, which is our lower 3 chakras, and this is where all our fears, angers, resentments, everything resides down here. This is all, it represents matter. So that's where we hold everything in our physical form. And when we start to strip those things away, really look at, okay, why am I experiencing anger? And, go down that and release that. Why am I experiencing judgment? When we start to look at these things, every little thing we do and every modality we use, like breath work and meditation, it just lightens that vibration and it brings us up into our upper 3 chakras, which is light. This is where we connect, and we can connect to every word that's ever been said in the history of of the universe, and we just need to learn how to tap into that. So I went through that journey and tried everything I could. And my auntie said one thing on a day and said, just, you know the old radios where you tune in with your little dial?
Yeah.
She said, why don't you give that a go? And I was like, that sounds crazy. But I gave it a go. And after probably about 4 or 5 weeks, I was communicating. I had an experience, and it just blew me away. You know, I came into meditation with questions, and I didn't leave with answers. I left with a deep knowing inside me of this is, you know.
Yeah.
Because that if I got an answer, it could be different for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, that knowing in your body is, this is what's right for me.
How beautiful.
It's not an answer to a question that's suitable for everyone.
Yeah.
Which is, again, brings me back to Ayurveda. Ayurveda is unique to the person. You know, it's...
Which is probably why it's hard to explain, because it is so...
It is, yeah, because, Western medicine has taught us that you get this diagnosis, you take this pill.
Yeah.
Whereas Ayurveda is, you are made up of these elements, and one of them is going to be more prominent than another, and these are the qualities that make up that. And so if we work on a system of like increases like, for example, if I'm experiencing anger, I've got too much heat in my body. So if I'm eating spicy foods every night, what's that going to do to me? It's going to exacerbate that problem. So, yeah, we work with the opposite qualities to help cool down that in that instance, you know.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so everyone's different, and we sit down and evaluate what makes up each individual person while we're in front of them, which is why it takes, you know, it's not just a 10, 15-minute consultation and a pill. It's a good 45 minutes to an hour, and really working through, you know, what makes up that person.
And you know what though, we are going to go through a little bit of our personal stories, but you were able to diagnose me just from a photo of my tongue. when
It was that, but it was also everything that you had been telling me up to that point.
Oh, okay.
So we have like many questions that we will go through, and they'll be different depending on who's in front of us and what they're presenting with. And then we have our diagnostic tools. Which is tongue examination, eye examination, you know, skin, your gait, everything, your nails. So based on what you're telling me, I'm going to look at different things in your body to back up what I think is going on in your body.
Yeah.
So everything that you were telling me, I had malabsorption in my mind. And when you poked your tongue out, it had all the symptoms of malabsorption.
Yeah.
So, and then obviously I still got you in for a consultation. I still got your whole story, because while I can see that that's what's happening, that's, you know, like your symptom, I don't work with your symptom. I travel back and get to the root cause, and I work with the root cause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should we go into that?
No, before we jump into that, I think we just need to take a step further back. And, but one thing before we even do that, I just want to clarify, you have an ability to talk to spirit. We're not saying you have to have that ability to get into Ayurveda and be interested in Ayurveda.
No, absolutely not.
Just in case people were listening going, well, I don't have that ability.
So there is a specific journey that, I do believe we are all here for, but only a very small percentage of people will actually choose that calling. And, you know, so there's I'll just quickly go into the 4 aims, which are the Shatapurusharthas. And the first aim is your Dharma. I've already spoke about your Dharma. It's finding your purpose in life. And then the next one is Artha, which is you build a foundation of wealth and knowledge to help you achieve your Dharma. But that all starts, so this is the second aim, but it all comes back to your health. Because if you don't have your health, like I said, you're never going to be able to achieve, you know, those higher realms. You're not going to, you know, you're going to be so busy trying to heal yourself. You're not going to be able to commit to, what am I actually here in life to do?
Yeah.
You know. And then from there we have karma, which is, and it's not karma as in learn your lessons, it's karma as in experiencing joy. And, you know, the downside to joy is you can always have too much of a good thing. So everything has to be kept in balance. And then from there, you know, you can start working on, you know, achieving enlightenment. So this is our journey. Not everybody chooses it in this life.
Yeah.
But these are, according to, Ayurveda, these are, the 4 aims of life.
And even though it sounds, you did a great job explaining it, but it can sound complicated. If you follow Nikki on social media, which is at
The Way of the Warrior Woman.
The Way of the Warrior Woman.
It's very wordy. I tried to condense it, but
That's what
the thing that I've found with your videos is it's just everyday simple things.
Good tips.
Like it's almost like a lot of the stuff that you share, it's like living the simple life.
100%. And when my life fell apart and I had to strip everything away and become okay, I had, I think I did mention I had to be okay with nothing. And then from nothing, I realised what actually was important in life and how long I had been striving for the money, the house, just all these things that would make me look good to the outside world. But I'd been stripped back to zero. And I was okay with people seeing me with nothing.
Right.
And coming from that place, it's so much easier to realise how little we actually need. And the basis for a happy, beautiful, amazing life is happiness within ourselves. And what are the little things that make up happiness for you? And for me, it was, hopefully having grandkids one day and being able to throw them up in the air. So I had to heal my body.
Yeah.
That to me was absolute number one priority. It's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah.
But it's...
But you stopped and gave yourself the chance to think about that and go, what is important to me? And you were thinking of the future Nikki and going, I want her to be able to throw the grandkids in the air. So how beautiful that you respected yourself enough to take the time now for the future Nikki.
Yeah. And I had no idea what that future was going to look like. And I always wanted to have more kids, but I was only blessed with one. So it made it even more important because I have no idea how many grandkids I might have none. And I had to become okay with that as well. And at that point, my daughter was telling me that, if she had kids at all, she would probably adopt. And I was like, okay, well now that's something else that I can work on being okay with. Instead of going, that's rubbish, you don't know what you're talking about. It's like, can I be okay with that?
Wow.
Rather than dismissing what she's saying and just finding peace within myself with everything that comes at me, rather than pushing away and going, that'll never happen, that's not in my future plan. But we never know what's in our future plan. No one knows. You can make as many plans as you want and someone upstairs is going to laugh and go, there you go. This is what you're getting because this is your lesson. If you think it's just all going to be, beer and Skittles, then out goes the rug.
Yeah. And that's another good point, which we're moving back from Ayurveda, but in terms of lessons, like by reflecting on things and learning the lessons, then you're not going to repeat them as likely, or you're less likely to repeat those lessons because you are stopping and reflecting and having insights and things. But we're so busy nowadays, no one's taking that time.
Yeah, that's the curse. And, and when you sit down and you do this kind of work and you show up every day. So, for example, it took me months to come to terms with the fact that I might not have my own grandchildren. And I worked on that every day. And when you show up for yourself every day, you're actually changing the neural pathways so that when she comes at me and if it's, dismissive or in anger and saying, I'm never giving you grandkids or whatever, I'm not reacting to that. Because I'm okay with every outcome now.
So what does showing up for yourself mean for people who... Like when you say that, what do you mean?
So for me, it was waking up in the morning and moving my body. So I have a joint sequence that as soon as I get out of bed, because you're lying down for, anywhere between 7 and 9 hours. And so I get up every morning and I move every joint in my body, and that takes about 5 to 10 minutes. It looks like meditation, and that could look different every day. I could be meditating with a flame. I could be doing a Kriya meditation, which is a 45-minute process. I could be walking barefoot on the lawn with a cup of tea and just looking up in the trees and watching the birds wake up in the morning. It's
almost
different.
just carving out time instead of just getting into the rat race. You are carving out time for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's being intentional, I think.
And I was also educating myself. So
Yeah.
for half an hour every morning, I was doing something to improve myself every day. And whether that looked like a creative pursuit or doing a course or something for 30 minutes every morning, and it was the last 30 minutes of my 2-hour block, I was playing the guitar or I was on my laptop and I was, jotting down my notes, and I was learning more about how to be the person that I wanted to be, how to show up every day as the best person that I can be.
I forgot, you've mentioned that 2-hour block to us before. So it was what, 5:30 to 7:30 or
5 to 7.
5 to 7.
Yep.
Every morning.
Every morning.
Just devoting it to yourself.
Yep.
Okay.
Again, my journey came from depletion. I gave and gave and gave. And the most beautiful act of love that I can give myself now is those 2 hours every day. And, it's not 2 hours every day. Sometimes that act of love, especially, for a woman, we have certain times of the month where we just need rest. Sometimes that might be sleeping in till 6 or reading a book in bed till 6, so it does look different every day depending on what time of the month, what phase, of our cycle we're going through as well, and just really honing in on that.
Yeah. Well, let's delve into, and then we can tie it into what you went through, Tracey. Most of this is from talking to you and following you on social media. Food seems to be a big part of it. Sunlight, and can you sort of step us through, just, for people who this is all new to, but I guarantee if they've listened this far, they're interested. What are the sort of the key areas that you kind of look at?
So if I've got someone in front of me, then I'm definitely looking at the food that they're taking in, the times that they're taking it in. I treat food as medicine.
Yeah.
Before you want to take supplements and, before I'm talking about giving people herbs or anything, I'm just cutting it right back to the bare basics. Well, what are you actually nourishing yourself with? And sunlight, the giver of all life on our planet, and we've been told, it's been villainized our whole lives and our parents' whole lives.
Yeah.
Bring that in, you know.
I've even heard that sunglasses aren't that great for us, so I don't really wear sunglasses very often anymore.
Yeah, so when we're wearing sunglasses, so our eyes are our window to tell our skin what to do in the sunlight. So when we've got sunglasses on and we're shielding it, it doesn't know to protect itself when we're out in the sunlight. So just, there's lots of little things like, that sun gazing morning and night are really great for your circadian rhythm. So if you're having trouble sleeping, that's just another tool that you can use to help get you back into a really good rhythm.
And sleep, obviously,
is huge.
Yeah.
Sleep is absolutely massive. It's your healing time.
Yeah.
And if you're not getting to bed by 10, which is when your body starts doing all its detox, it's basically the garbage man's coming at night time, you know.
Yeah.
And if you're awake and if you're still eating and you're still doing activities and you're not allowing your body to go through these processes, where's that going?
Yeah.
Yes.
You said to me once, I think about people eating late at night, and you said, well, they're either detoxing or digesting. And I was like, oh, that's a good tip for me to remember. I don't want my body digesting at night. I want it detoxing. I want that process to be happening.
So wise.
You are so wise. I was going to say you were so wise, but you are so wise. Yes. Yeah.
Another biggie these days that I'm really conscious of is Wi-Fi. We're absolutely
that was the other one I was trying to remember.
hammered with it.
Yes.
It's, it's a silent killer. We can't see it, and it's everywhere. It's all through, we were told 15 years ago that, if you didn't have a smart home, who were you? Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these smart homes are very bad for us.
And you don't even have a microwave in your house, which is very annoying when you visit, Nikki, and you can't heat up anything.
When your best friend buys you a heat pack and you can't heat it up because you don't have a microwave.
I didn't even think of that. What did you do with that?
It's at work.
Oh, that's my favourite item. I didn't even think about that.
So what do you do? Because obviously you still have internet.
Yeah, so we still
what are
have
your tips?
internet.
What do you do?
So we have a timer that turns our internet off. It goes off at 10 o'clock at night, and it goes on in the morning when I turn it on. And so most of us, my kids are all adults now, so we're getting ready and we're going to work. So we don't need internet. We don't need Wi-Fi flying through our house during the day. So most days it's off. Every night it's off, which, it's annoying for the kids when they're, they want to watch their movies till after 10. But we just told them why we were doing it, and no one's ever really questioned it. They've, used their phones to hotspot, or, there's a way.
Yeah.
There's a way that they can do it. Yeah. But in our house, the connection is in our wardrobe. Mm-hmm. And it's very close to our bed, and I won't be sleeping that close to.
If you think about where ours is, it's in the garage, and our bedroom, it shares a wall with the garage.
Yeah.
Which is
I
probably
wish you had told me I would have bought my electrical meter.
Okay, we'll do that next time.
Next time.
Yeah. Even I got told about from the homeopath at my office about the earbuds that everyone wears.
And
I literally said to Tommy, if you want to buy a new pair of headphones for Easter, I will replace those. I just don't want him wearing them. Yeah. I couldn't get Ali across the line just yet, but maybe a talk from Auntie Nikki.
Yeah, I can't even get my own kids across the line. They're aware of it. I actually had them until I knew. I'd only just bought them, and I might have found out within a month, and then just was like, well, I'm never going to use them. And my daughter asked me if she could have them. And so I gave her all the information about it, and I said, just read all that, and if you still want to put that in your head, right where your brain is, then, you go nuts.
Yeah.
And she still took them. It's a slow process, but, I see the changes now compared to 3 years ago, and it's so vastly different. I know in 3 years it's going to be so much more different. It's just, I can't tell them what to do, but I can show them what to do.
Yeah, and I think you do a beautiful job of that, because even look at your videos on Instagram, and you're always role modelling all these things of what you wear, what you eat, what you cook on. Like, all of these things are just in their awareness.
Yeah, that's
so
true.
They'll be absorbing all of that.
Yeah.
And we should point out that you have had a happy ending with because everything you've said so far is you have one child, but now we're talking in multiples. So just briefly,
I have my 3-kid family. When the rug got pulled out from under me, I basically had a good long look in the mirror, and I said, you've got 2 years. You're not dating. You're not doing anything. You're not bringing anything unnecessary into your life. Mm-hmm. It's just me and you. And that's what I did. And within 1 week, less than a week of those 2 years, I went on my first date with my soon-to-be husband.
Amazing.
But can I also just say,
with 2 beautiful children.
She put it out there that she didn't want to meet online. She wanted to meet through friends. That's exactly how it happened. It was a set-up blind date.
Yep.
So all of the things that you wanted, and also I'm sure that a very lovely, wise friend of yours must have mentioned to list all the qualities you wanted in a relationship, because you did that and you nailed them.
I not only nailed them, I discovered some that I never knew I always wanted. When I met him, I was like, this is amazing.
So you got your happy ending.
Yeah.
Extra kids.
Crazy stuff. I wrote down stuff, and I was working with a holistic healer at this time, and I said to her, I kind of worked everything back, like, if I want this then I've got to do this now, and, so I worked it all back. And I said to her, wow, I really have to start bringing someone in. Let's get to work. And so I showed her my list, and she read it, and she went, wow, you're asking a lot, aren't you? And I was like, it's this or nothing. I'm so happy being single. And I'm not bringing anyone into my life unless they fulfill me this much. Like, I had worked for 2 years to make sure, and I know I said this to you both when you were trying to make me date, and are you ready to, I wasn't whole. And I knew if I wasn't whole, I was going to bring someone in that was going to try and fill a part of me that I knew I needed to fill myself.
Yeah.
So I made sure that and don't get me wrong, I did date and realised what I was doing. And my journal actually helped me a lot with that, because, I was lying to myself the whole time I was dating, thinking, yes, this is, I can make this work. I can do this. I can do that. Not going back to my list and going, they're not ticking half the things on your list here.
This is lots of people do that.
Yeah, so many, and and settling, and
not valuing yourself enough to go, I'm happier with my own company, meeting my own needs, than having someone that's not the right fit for me coming in.
Is this the best I'm going to get?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want the best I'm going to get.
Yeah,
I
want
don't
the
want
best.
it. I want
the best.
I want the best.
And I deserve
want
the
someone
best.
that comes into me whole as well.
Yeah.
And I also had to find someone that fit in with my ridiculous morning routine as well. And ticked every box.
He even drank the same tea as you. I remember that being a big thing that you...
Yeah, we had the same favourite, all of our favourite drinks. Actually, I fell in love with him the second that I asked him what his favourite book was, and he named the title of my favourite book, and I was like,
oh my God, that's like a movie, like
really have
something
found my
off a movie.
person.
That's good for her because she's a movie buff, and so it's nice
Yes.
that she gets a movie ending.
Yeah.
Just a side note, Nikki is amazing at quoting movies, and it's something that we laugh about often.
She has 2 sisters, and she can quote, or she can talk in conversations.
We communicate in quotes.
Only in quotes. So if you're around them and you don't know the movie, it's like a foreign language because you're like, I don't know what you're talking about, you 3.
Well, just quickly, as you know, we've watched you through this whole journey. It's actually really lovely to see where you've got to, and we're very much looking forward to going to the wedding.
It's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, shall we delve into a little bit about how you helped Tracey, and then we can explore a little bit more about what Ayurveda is and how it helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, babe, do you want to...
Yeah, I can start it off. So I might have mentioned this in previous episodes about how last year I did, I thought I was going to be very proactive, and I could tell that my body wasn't flushing properly. And I knew that because I had previously gone to a retreat, and I met someone that had a colon clinic, and I was like, oh, I'd really like to do that. But at the time I thought, I actually don't think I need that right now. Anyway, last year I felt like actually I could use something like that. So I looked her up and I went and booked in, and I had a colon cleanse. And then while I was there, they had some Chinese herb detox packs, and they were talking to me about the benefits of those. And so I decided I was going to do these 2 packets of Chinese herb detox, which is a whole month worth of taking this particular drink, and see how that goes. Anyway, I felt like that helped at first, and then after a while I didn't really notice anything and didn't think much of it, but later on I started getting cramping and different symptoms. And on this one particular day, I had a women's conference, and so I had a bit of a mild adrenaline running through my body the whole day, and I was the last presenter of the day. So I think that mild sweaty palms and adrenaline just depleted my system on that day. And that night I ended up with probably, do you think it was like 5 hours worth of cramps? Remember you and Tommy were trying to help me get the cramps out? So I was getting excruciating pain from these cramps, and I was taking magnesium already. I was already just trying to deal with my minerals and things, but didn't really realize what was causing it. Anyway, they went away that night, and the next day I was on the phone to you and I was talking to you about, what had happened. And that's when I was literally getting coffee at the time, and you said, where are you? Can you stick your tongue out and take a photo? And I looked around. I was in my car, so luckily I was just waiting for my coffee. And I took a photo and sent it to you. And straight away you came back and you said, I think you've got nutrient malabsorption. And I was literally about to go to my psychedelics course, I think on the Saturday. And this was now on the Thursday. And you said, can you come tomorrow and I'll do a full assessment on you? And I was so busy with all the things, but I was like, there's no way I can go through that cramping again. I need to make this a priority. So I came to your house and you did a full assessment of me. And that's when you sort of discovered kind of what was going on in my body. But you were realizing that my body wasn't absorbing the food that I was eating.
And yes. Because it is all coming back to me now. You were screaming and crying.
I was
cramps.
in tears. It was the worst pain of cramps I've ever had. Like I'd had cramps before, which is why I'd looked into, going and seeing Penny, the homeopath. I was on practitioner grade magnesium. So, that's pretty strong. And I was still getting this kind of cramping.
Yeah.
So Nikki.
Over to you.
Yeah.
So then Tracey came to see me, and we start with assessing what elements make up Tracey's individual constitution. So we are all living things. We're all made up of the same elements that make up every living thing. So these are ether, air, fire, water, and earth. And in Ayurveda, we break these down into doshas, and these doshas are a combination of each of the elements. So vata is ether and air, and pitta is fire and water, and kapha is water and earth. So it's important to find out what someone's dominant dosha is, Like I mentioned before with the heat, if, my prominent dosha is pitta. So as much as I love eating hot and spicy foods, I know at certain times I can't eat them because it's just going to make everything, it's going to burn everything up really quickly, move it through my system, and it'll result in loose stools. And then I know that I'm not absorbing anything because it's just moving through my system way too fast.
Right.
So with your constitution, we assessed that, and then once we know what your constitution is, then I'm looking at what are your imbalances. So we talked through everything that you'd been going through. Obviously, I know Tracey, so I'd been hearing it over the course of a few months. You'd started developing those cramps up until this sort of this point. And she rocked up with a Coles bag or a Woolies bag full of multivitamins. I don't know how many, about 10 bottles in there or something. So when we're experiencing malabsorption, it doesn't matter what we put in, our body is not able to take it up. Because our digestive fire is so out of whack. So, you can shove as many herbs, supplements, whatever.
Waste as much of money as you like.
Yeah, and it's just, it's never really going to hit the spot. So over the course of the hour, obviously I'm asking Tracey a whole bunch of questions about, her sleep when she's we do get very graphic because we are focusing on what you're putting in your body. And this is not just food. I'm talking thoughts. I'm talking, everything we take in through all of our senses, our eyes, our ears, everything has to be digested in our body. So there's a big focus on that. And then we look at, okay, once it's in our body, how is our body able to handle it? And that all starts in our stomach. So what is our digestive fire looking like? And in fact, every single woman that has come to me, every single person that has come to me has issues with their digestive fire. So that's really the first thing I'm working on with anyone. Because if I can't get that sorted, nothing else is really, really going to scratch the, it's only going to scratch the surface. We're really not going to get back to any.
And this is where I think doctors aren't knowing that. Because
they don't have diet and nutrition in their
or in their studies
curriculum.
But even you picked up on one of the things I was doing, or a couple of things I was doing, and you've been telling me this for years, but I was never wanting to listen to you, was around ice water. I would freeze my bottom of my water bottles and then put the water in there afterwards, just so I had a massive big ice block in there. I always put ice in, always put ice in my drinks, always fridge water, all of that sort of stuff. And then you were saying how bad that is for your body to have to heat that up, and also what that's doing to your digestive fire. I was having yogurt. At night.
Big no-no.
Which I thought was really healthy, having some fruit and nuts with yogurt as a dessert compared to having something, more processed. And so that's where, again, when you were thinking you're being really healthy and you're having your smoothies and you're eating this and you're doing this, like you don't always know how that's affecting your body, depending on the time, depending on what your constitution is.
Scott, going back to the simplicity, we're told now that, everything's on the go, pack as many nutrients into a smoothie as possible, but our body physically, we have teeth, we have a jaw, we're meant to chew our food because digestion starts in our mouth. So, we're drinking these things and bypassing our mouth. So by the time it gets to the stomach, it's like, oh, we're not here to do this job. That was supposed to be done up there.
I actually thought about you at Zambrero yesterday. I hadn't eaten up until 3:00 in the afternoon, and I went and got a burrito, and everything in me just wanted to shove that burrito in as fast as possible. But then I remembered a recent video you posted about being slow and intentional. So I was slow and intentional with my burrito.
See, your stories
I'm
work
rubbing
on us.
I'm rubbing off.
Quite often I'll message Nikki and I just da-da-da-da-da. Today she walked in and because it was my birthday the other day, I showed her a copper water bottle that I bought off the back of one of her videos. So even after all these years.
Yeah. Penetrating slowly, I like it. So one of the other huge things that we look at in Ayurveda is elimination. So it's another thing that I don't think Western medicine puts a lot of focus on, is how are we removing these toxins from our body? We ask a lot from our body every day, every time we go through a drive-through, every time we put moisturizer on our skin that's got toxins on it, every time we, we're out at, I don't know what kind of work you'd say, you're a painter or whatever, we're breathing in just even, normal household toxins. We've got paint on the wall, we've got varnish on the floor, we've got surface, we clean our stuff with surface
and
spray.
And I've just been realising with burning candles and then that's leaving.
Yeah. So all of these things, our body is a filter for everything. So how are we able to remove that,
So is it almost, this is going to maybe oversimplify it, but because our lifestyle has evolved so quickly, like in the space of 100 years, compared to our physical bodies have not evolved at that speed. And so a lot of what you talk about in the simplicity is probably how the human body lived 500 years ago or 1,000 years ago. It kind of sounds a bit like that.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the first things I did when I started teaching myself how to bake was I baked a sprouted bread, which, I call bread. It doesn't look like anything what we would call bread. But, if we're going to eat things like wheats and those kinds of things, we should be eating them sprouted because our body can digest that when it's actually a whole grain. It's really hard for our body to take that up. Same with supplements. All of our supplements are synthetic. So over 100 years ago, when we started learning more about the fact that we have these vitamins and minerals and a balance and, all that kind of stuff, they started working out how to make money out of it, basically. We'll just cut right to the chase.
Yeah.
So you can't patent anything that is naturally occurring in, on the land. So we can't make money from that. So all of these herbs and everything that we use, you can just grow that yourself in your garden, but no one's making any money out of that. So they started learning how to create synthetic versions of everything that is already naturally occurring and create a business out of that. And the problem is it's synthetic. They might tell you that it's got all the same things as, this plant there, but that plant is made up of the same elements as our body. This synthetic product that's made by man, our body can't relate to that. And it can't. It's basically another thing that it's going to have to figure out how to detox from your body.
Yeah. I remember you saying to me years ago, and this one you did actually affect me, so well done to you, was around the diet drinks. So, I was always notorious for drinking Pepsi Max, and I would always go to a restaurant.
You didn't listen to me. I was saying that for 10 years.
So that was a big thing that came out from when Mum was sick and all these, things that are causing cancer. And that was one of the biggest no-no. So I've been banging on that one for a long time.
It was the wording that she said. She actually said to me, your body doesn't know what to do, this is your quote, with that chemical shitstorm. And you said, but your body knows what to do with sugar. So you're better off having the soft drink with the sugar that your body knows what to do with rather than the chemical shitstorm.
Yeah.
So that made sense to my head. And I was like, okay, so we're not doing that anymore. And literally for years and years and years, I've not drunk diet drinks. Someone had one in our fridge from the weekend and I looked at it and I was like, oh, you could have a glass of that. And I was like, no, you can't. I feel like I'm really addicted to that. If I have one glass, it'll creep and creep. Yep. So I just keep that out of my awareness, out of my system. I don't have that. But with the flushing that was happening for me, my body wasn't flushing correctly, which is why I was drawn to doing the Chinese herb detox and the colon cleanse. But also what I was doing, which I didn't realise, was I was having really hot baths, to the point where
I remember that.
I wasn't putting any cold in. And even after me being in the bath maybe for an hour, Amelia might get in after me and be like, Mum, the water's too hot. And I've been sitting in that for an hour and it's still gotten too hot for her.
Yeah,
my body was just craving that heat. And I think it was just trying to get me to sweat out and flush out whatever wasn't happening naturally in my body. And then also I know that I think it was my estrogen that was then high in my body because of the non-flushing. Is that what would happen?
Well, I mean, all of us, we're all estrogen dominant at the moment because of all of the products that we're, putting into our body. Almost everything that you buy on the supermarket shelves has seed oils in it. Yeah. And these are all endocrine disruptors. Everything you put on your face, your makeup, your skincare, your fake tans, everything has all these toxins in it. And it's spiking our estrogen.
And then all my moods were thrown off. Poor Scott had a bit of a cow of a wife.
Have we done it? We were going to do a podcast
about my hormones, but we haven't done that yet. But yeah, I was
still too soon.
Yes. So with Tracey, I took it back because she started the story with the colon cleanse,
Chinese herb
detox that she did. But obviously you don't just take those for no reason. So then my inquiries led me back to a very stressful event at the beginning of the year for Tracey.
Oh, I forgot about that.
So what happens when we have stress in our body? It can dampen your digestive fire, and then, that just leads to all the problems from there. So you destroyed your digestive fire, because think about when you're stressed and you feel sick to the stomach and everything's contracting, you're not eating at the regular times. You might be, when we stress eat, we tend to eat things that are not so good for us and they're not nurturing us. And, you're eating yogurt at night, and all these things are dampening your digestive fire. So all I needed to do is to go in and suggest a few things not to do and a few things to do. And I don't even think you implemented most of the to-do ones, but taking out the things like the yogurts at night, taking out the things that I could clearly pinpoint were, as a big no-no for your particular body type, alone, you said, made such a massive difference.
Because salads, I love a salad. Like, people often think that's weird, but even when I go to Bali, I'll have salad for breakfast as part of my meal, because I love salads. They're drenched in dressings. But I was having lots of salad at night as well. And so again, that coldness and,
Yeah, your body type is already quite cold. So if you think
think of that, everyone, with the heat packs, that's why. Yeah. It's my constitution.
And, when our digestive fire is shot, we're not assimilating any of the nutrients from the foods that we're taking in. So if we don't have that right balance of, our vitamins and minerals, you're going to notice it with things like cramping. You're going to be craving things that aren't normal, like scalding hot baths.
Yeah.
So when you're, it doesn't have to be a food craving. It can be, some people eat dirt, and that's telling us a certain thing.
Mineral or something,
So you were craving your really, really hot baths.
I was also going into the cupboard and wanting sugar. I don't remember exactly when that timing was, but it was definitely last year, where I would be going to bed and saying to myself, you're going to go to bed. Why are you shoving this sugar in your face? And it was just like a compulsion, which I don't have anymore. So I know that it was definitely something in my system that was craving that to a point where I couldn't challenge it. Like, my head was going, this is ridiculous. What are you doing?
Yeah, I've got 2 of those in our house, and after every meal, they don't like the taste of
savoury.
They just don't like the taste of any food in their mouth. So they have the sugar to get rid of that that flavour, whatever we've had for dinner. Yeah. They'll love the food, but just don't like that aftertaste. Yeah. Clove. Suck on a clove. Oh, it'll get rid of that sugar craving immediately.
I bet it would.
That sounds disgusting.
I can't get them to do it either.
Funny that. Don't put that in the video. Pop that in your next Instagram video. Yeah, just have a clove, guys. You want to go for chocolate? Just go for the clove.
Yeah.
That sounds appealing. But I'm sure it works.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've learned heaps, and it's probably time to wrap up. But before we do, I guess my last question is, people have been listening, been interested. I can't imagine they're not interested in wanting to go down this path. What would be some simple, basic advice to give to people who want to start trying to implement this kind of way of living?
So if they're experiencing any pain, discomfort, and I guess really tune into what's going on, and don't ignore anything. So it could be bloating after a meal. It could be, you might think that, you've got a bit of arthritis, setting in, or whatever it is you're going through. Oh, we were going to talk about hormones as well, weren't we? Mm-hmm. So I see a lot of women in their, late 30s, early 40s that say they're going through perimenopause. And I was one of those, when I was 41, 42, I had the night sweats, I had the hot flushes, the mood swings, and, through diet and lifestyle, I'm nearly 47 and I experience none of these symptoms anymore. So
people need to hear that. I'm going to emphasize that, because I have that many clients that think that that's just normal. That's just going through the change.
Too.
That's just, and I want you to all hear that. It doesn't have to be that way. Nikki is proof of that.
It doesn't. And, you know, it takes a lot of resilience and discipline and, you know, showing up for yourself to reverse these types of symptoms.
Yeah.
So unless you want to go to the doctor and be reliant on a pill for the rest of your life, you're actually going to have to go, you know, look at yourself, look inwards and start doing the work and just make little changes. It could be one thing a month. You know, at the end of the year, you've stacked 12, you know, habits, you know, whether that be around food, mindset, you know, even if you know, do what I did and just commit to 10 minutes a day of learning something new, whether that's a podcast or someone that is quite knowledgeable even on Instagram or something like that. That's, you know, providing this
quite knowledgeable about Ayurveda on Instagram.
Yeah.
But so you can follow me at The Way of the Warrior Woman.
Yeah, because it's also, the tips that you gave me wasn't just taking out the yogurt and the cold water, which obviously were really effective, but even just something little like making a ginger and black peppercorn tea was what you suggested I have before my meals to get that digestive fire going. So that's really not that big a deal. Like, that's not...
It's not. And I try to use culinary herbs. So obviously there's hundreds and hundreds, 600 odd herbs that, you know, that you can use
from.
Yeah. But I predominantly, I would say 99% of the time, I'm going to tell you what's already in your house and how you can utilize that for whatever's going on. Because while we use them as herbs and spices, you can use everything medicinally in a higher dose. So, you know, it can't get any easier.
Yeah.
You know, we all have these things.
And so it's just going to you or going somewhere where they know your constitution, know what's going on for you, and they can give you those really easy tips that, like what you said, that you can just chip away at them. It could be one a month, it could be one a week.
Yeah, so I'll
whatever.
find that people will come to me and they might have multiple things going on, but this is the worst symptom. So that's what I'm working on.
Yeah.
Because I want to show them that I'm not healing them. I'm an aid. You know, they come to me and I can tell them stuff, but at the end of the day, you go home and you heal yourself.
Yeah.
You know, do you want this?
Yeah.
How much do you want it? Here's all the information you need.
And I think I literally had a client this morning who told me that she is going to be on this particular medication for the rest of her life. That's what she's been told. And I'm like, have you gone and seen any sort of wellness practitioners, not just a doctor? And she said, no, that was the first thing I encouraged her to do. Go and get your system checked out. I just can't understand someone's getting prescribed a medication for the rest of their life. That makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I know. And
That
multiple
you can even,
medications.
that you can even know that that's possible for them for the rest of their life. Like, why is the other things not being addressed that underlying
I
that?
know, it's terrible. And I'm actually in the middle of recording a documentary at the moment, and one of the things that my stepdaughter said in there was when she was put on the pill at a very young age, this big warning came up on the doctor's screen, and it was, you know, this causes, you know, mental health issues. And the doctor just dismissed it, carried on with his business on the thing, never mentioned it to the mum, never mentioned it to Grace, and just carried on. And Grace had clocked it enough to remember, you know, obviously not old enough to be able to stand up for her own, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, clocking it and going, wow, Western medicine, they just dismiss that.
My mum literally has just lost all her hair from a medication.
Yeah.
And she's got my kind of thick hair, shorter, but she looks like it's frazzled and fried, and she was having clumps of it come out from a medication.
It is a slippery slope, and we start with one, not realising that, you know, the average medication, you could throw any medication at me and I could do a 5-minute Google search and find at least 50 side effects.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in 5 minutes, imagine what I could find in hours.
And yet people aren't turning to the natural alternatives or even seeing what's possible. They're just going down that Western
and then when
medical.
they experience one of those side effects that they don't know because they didn't read that, you know, then they're going back to the doctor and the doctor's like, oh, okay, you're experiencing that. Well, I can give you this to help with that.
Yes.
Now we've got another 50, you know.
One of my clients had long COVID. They gave him a medication that damaged his stomach, and now he's got stomach issues. So it's now led into another problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just a bit of an endless cycle. So yeah, I go and see an Ayurvedic practitioner if you can find one. Reach out to me. I do online consultations. My website is The Way of the Warrior Woman. And
you have a free resource on there as well, don't you?
we have
I'm sure I saw something like that.
We've got masterclass. If you're curious about finding out what your dosha is, we do have an online quiz, and it's not going to match, what you're going to get with, in front of a practitioner, but it's going to give you a good guide.
Yeah.
And then if you want to explore it further, reach out to me. We can do an online consultation. If you live in Perth, I can do a consult with you face to face, which is, it's always a lot better.
Yeah.
And
definitely
go
follow
from
Nikki,
there.
because you've got so much good tips. Like, she's my friend, and I keep saying to her, "Why don't you tell me this in real life?" Like, I've got to look on Instagram to find something that she's doing or done for ages, and I'm like, always messaging you now. Where did you get your such and such, or what should I get for? Where do you get your cotton sheets?
It is a lot. There is a lot of information on there, and the point is there are so many different things you can do rather than just taking a pill.
Yeah.
It's all about checking in with yourself and, what aligns with you. And I think a lot of us just don't do that. And another thing that I offer, which I've only just created this because I reached out to a lot of my clients and noticed that they were all suffering with consistency. They just, they weren't able to, even you, I gave you a whole bunch of suggestions, but we only have the time to implement a few. And I guess after a month, you sort of forget.
Drops off the radar.
Yeah, it does. And, the information that I'm giving, it's not just information for now. This is information for life.
Yeah.
And if you want to, if you want this symptom to not come back again. So it's all about prevention, cure, maintenance.
Yeah.
So what I did is I put together a workbook, which I call the 12 Pillars of Life. And there you go. And
Nikki's
so
showing it to the camera like a true pro.
I know, here you go. So this is something that I worked through myself when I was healing myself, and it was all about the foundations that I was talking about at the very beginning, and really discovering who you are, peeling away the layers of who you thought you were based on other people's, input, opinions, what you learnt, when you were, whenever, and discovering who you are and what your purpose is, not what you think you should be doing because it makes the most money or whatever, is just what are you really here to do? And that's all part of the, there's 12 pillars in here. So
Very
obviously
holistic. Very holistic.
very holistic. I guess what it did for me is it allowed me to build a structure so that when something came at me unexpected, I don't wobble anymore. I know who I am. I know where I'm coming from. I know what my purpose in life is. I don't care what that stranger says or does, or, and it's not just a stranger. You've got friends and family that always want to give their input and do this or that, or they'll trigger you from your childhood or whatever it is. Just having that unshakable foundation.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Of being in your centre.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. How beautiful. One of the things I always tell people, I know we're wrapping up, but I just wanted to get this in there, that it's a sister science of yoga. That's where I heard it somewhere. So I like telling people that, because obviously yoga back in the day would have been seen as very woo-woo and a bit, different and stuff back in the 70s or however long ago.
Yeah.
And now yoga's no big deal. Like, you've got footballers doing yoga, So it's so mainstream now. I just wanted to point out that this was from the very beginning too.
This science is over 5,000 years old. So Ayurveda is the oldest healthcare system known to man.
Yeah.
It was in the Vedas, and the Vedas are, 10,000 years old.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, if it wasn't for the words like Ayurveda, dosha, pitta, it all just makes perfect sense. If they had more modern names or whatever, people, I'm sure, would be way more, not open to it. I think everyone's going to be open to it, but just way more accepting to go, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Why is it in Sanskrit? That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it's so old, people.
Yeah.
If you break down the word Ayurveda, Aya means science or knowledge, and Veda means life. So it's the knowledge of life, the science of life. The oldest science of life.
And we've just moved away from that. Like back in the day, we had all these practices. That was part of your, your day. And now, because we overschedule ourselves, the way that the Western world sort of works, everything's overscheduled. Whereas you look at even places like Bali, where people are much slower in their pace of life and their connection, what they're eating. Like there's all sorts of intentionality that goes through their day that us rushing from one place to the next, we're not really getting in our modern.
No, we're oblivious to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not checking in with what's really important, and that's your family, that's your, whoever you pray to.
And even what you're feeling, like the client this morning was telling me that she had to be on the same medication for the whole year. She was saying that she's got sensitivities in her stomach, and that sometimes when she doesn't give herself enough time at night time to, think of her meal and go and organise the meal, she'll just get something rubbish on the way back from the office, and then she knows it's going to give her a reaction. She's buying that food knowing the reaction that's coming.
Yep.
And I said to her, if you were treating yourself like a child, like you're looking after your younger self, would you give a child food that you know is going to give them a reaction? No, you'd be a terrible babysitter. Like, no one's going to be leaving their kid with you if you didn't follow, what their dietary requirements were.
Absolutely.
And yet people are doing that all the time for themselves.
Yeah, it takes a lot of discipline. Many times we have done big trips driving back from Albany, and, we get back quite late in the day, and, my partner will say, what will we do for dinner tonight? And I'm like, well, I know exactly what we're going to do for dinner tonight, because I know exactly what's in the freezer, I know exactly what's in the fridge, and, we're having a good meal tonight.
Yeah.
It sounds amazing.
A few years ago, that would have just been whatever we can pick up in a drive-through. We would have regretted it. We would have had a crappy sleep. It's not just that meal.
Yeah.
It disrupts everything.
I think you notice that too. Like when we come back from holidays, if I've been in Bali where we've been having big buffet breakfasts and things I wouldn't normally have at that time of the day, or even just the overindulging, I'm ready to get back to regular eating and
Your body craves routine.
Yeah. So.
All right, you two, I have to wrap you up. I know you could talk all day. Thank you, Nikki.
Thank you so much for having me. That was really great.
Yeah, it was amazing. I'm sure everyone got a ton out of that. And thank you, Tracey. I'll do the quick wrap up. If you've been listening, you know everything I'm about to say, but bear with me. Retreats. We've got the individual retreat in May. There is still a couple of places. We've actually sold over half already, and we still have a month to go. So by the time you hear this, it'll probably be about 2 weeks to go. So jump on the website, traceyquayle.com. You can follow Tracey at traceyquayle.therapy. You can follow Nikki at The Way of the Warrior Woman, and I'll put all the links to Nikki's website and Instagram and other social media on the show notes. The relationship retreat is in June, so check out, there's links from traceyquayle.com on there as well.
We're still in our early bird discount for the relationship retreat.
You can get $200 off if you book 30 days before the event, the retreat. Okay, I think that is everything. Well done, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for having me.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.